Good morning. Today is December the 9th, 12:09, and we are just making headway, as they say, but through the Christmas season, Advent season, and what a joyous season it is. This morning, we are talking about Christmas. Well, actually, we're talking about the war on Christmas. There is a war going on. The war on Christmas, and that's what we'll be talking about this morning. You are listening to the Dear Church podcast, and we are singing again. We've been practicing.
I hope it sounds good.
I think it will.
We'll see.
It has to. We've sang it so many times. It has to.
Feliz Navidad.
He wanted me to say the Welcome to the Dear Church podcast all in Spanish because I was in Mexico for 1 week. You are listening to the Dear Church podcast.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child. So tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace.
Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang, and we have with us Pastor Eugene and our podcast crew, as always, on this almost Christmas Monday morning. Christmas is nigh.
It is nigh.
It is nigh, as they say. And, I thought, what better way to celebrate this Advent season than talking about Christmas things, as they say, in the next coming weeks. And today we are starting this off with the war on Christmas. I wanted to talk about lighter topics to end the year, make it festive, make it fun. Maybe the war on Christmas isn't the best fun title, but that's what we want to talk about. By the way, as we talk about Christmas, what is your favorite thing about Christmas, other than what it actually is?
Probably the war aspect.
Yeah, I was going to say gingerbread houses. I have actually never made a gingerbread house in my life. I don't know if that's like a me activity, to be honest with you.
Do
people still do that?
Really,
is that from like the 1950s?
I think people still do it. You can buy one at Costco.
Like a pre-made one?
No, like crackers are there, and then you just put it together.
But so I guess my question was, when people make it, what's the point of making it? Because do you eat it afterwards? Do you just look at it and then just watch it rot? What's the point of it?
I don't think it rots.
Gingerbread doesn't rot?
The cookies don't rot. They just turn stale. So you could technically eat it, but I think it's just for decoration.
Interesting. Do you have a Christmas tree in your house?
Yes. Because I'm Christian.
Because you're Christian.
Yeah. Do you have one?
I do.
Okay.
I don't know if it's because I'm Christian. Nice. How tall is your Christmas tree? I always wonder how people do their Christmas setup. It's always different for people.
Yeah, I think it's about 8 feet tall, something like that. Like normal size.
So one time I bought a tree, my first tree ever.
Is it real or is it fake?
So I bought a real tree the first year that Angela and I got married. I'll never do it ever again.
Why?
So the first year we bought it, I was like, you know what? We're going to get the biggest tree ever. I don't even care. We brought it into our apartment. It bent. Like the top third was bent because it was hitting the ceiling. And then we decorated it. It was really great. It smelled great. I was like, wow, this is so awesome, having a real tree. I never had a tree before. And then about mid-January, it started really to have a stench. I had it until mid-January because I was like, this is so beautiful.
You wanted to keep it as long as you could?
Yeah, so mid-January.
Did you put water in it?
I did. There's like a little syrup that you have to put in it.
Yeah.
The tree eats it up.
Do you know it's a socioeconomic divide?
What is?
Depending on what tree you have in your house.
Whether it's real or fake?
Yeah. If you're middle class, you have a fake one. If you're upper
Really?
middle, you have a real one.
What if you're upper?
I don't know. I guess it's just the bigger real one.
Oh. Well, I guess I'm upper then because my tree was huge. It was like 10 feet. And then I tried to throw it away, and the little the burrs, what is it, little needles, got everywhere.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Like everywhere on our white carpet.
Yeah, that's what happens. That's why you don't put it on a white carpet.
So I didn't know that at the time. And
There's a tree carpet that you could buy.
oh,
So you could just gather that up or wash the carpet that you put under the tree.
yeah. So we did that everywhere, and then I had to vacuum. I had to empty the vacuum multiple times, and still up until last year, I found little pine needles in my couch. It was a traumatic time for me, so I'll never get a real tree ever again.
It means you can't handle. Yeah, you got no handles.
I'm not the upper echelon of society, I guess. But
Even
you know,
Junzuk outhandles you. That's what it means.
Not in basketball, I know that for sure. Not in driving, I know that for sure. Speaking of driving, I'm a very good driver. Anyway,
This is why people skip the intro too, by the way.
yeah, no, but I wanted to make it a little lighthearted, a little festive.
Okay.
You know, everyone loves Christmas, but you know, like you said, a lot of people after Thanksgiving Day will start turning on Christmas music. And I think this season is really filled with wonder and joy. And, you know, it's great and it's festive, but the question is, are we focusing on what the real meaning of Christmas is? And the fact that I have to say the real meaning of Christmas already means that there is an issue, right? Because if you knew what the meaning of Christmas was, there is no reason for me to say the real meaning of Christmas. And so I just want to make sure that us as Christians, us as members of this church, that we continue to focus on the focus.
Continue to focus on the focus.
If that
I
makes
like
sense. Is that poetic of me?
Yeah. When you rhyme the same word, it's very poetic.
Yeah. Shel Silverstein taught me that one.
Yeah.
So I guess the question that I want to begin with, and maybe we'll just kind of start a discussion here, is what really is Christmas? Is it really on December 25th? Why do we celebrate it?
Yeah, we have celebrated Christmas on December 25th for at least
Very long
like
time.
1,800 years or something like that. Something very, very far back. As far as we can remember, records showing, even in the first century, we saw people celebrating the birth of Christmas around, Sol Invictus
Yep, the
around that
Roman.
time, right?
Yep.
And so we have been celebrating Christmas. And what Christians have done throughout the 2 millennia is fascinating.
Yes.
It's spectacular because what Christians have done is they have taken what people have remembered. So how do you remember life? How do you remember life? You remember with markers in life. And so people remember, Labor Day, and then that's the beginning of the fall semester or something like that. People
Yep.
have markers.
Yep.
Martin Luther King Day, and it's in the middle of January or toward the end of January, that kind of thing. President's Day, and then people have markers. What Christians have done throughout 2,000 years, though, is they have started by making their own markers and calendars, because Romans had a calendar, all these other places that had calendars. And instead of using their calendars, Christians started to put in their markers, their special days.
Yeah.
And Christmas was one of them. And the fact that now, 2,000 years later, the greatest marker of time in the world is Christmas is a fantastic, spectacular thing. Everybody knows when Christmas is. And Christmas is, it is one of the biggest markers of the calendar, if not the biggest marker for every single person in the United States and the world recognizes Christmas.
Yeah.
And that is Jesus' birthday. Jesus' birthday is the biggest marker for the calendar throughout the world in 2024, which is awesome. And that's why when we heard things like even Kamala, if you still remember her, she would say she's remembered or recorded saying things like, how dare we say Merry Christmas? And it was this whole like social justice thing because other people couldn't celebrate Christmas or other people aren't Christian and we need to be more inclusive.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
beside the point. Beside the point because that marker is distinctively Christian and it has gone throughout or pervaded every single other social and religious culture out there where even my Jewish neighbor would say, Merry Christmas to me. And so that was a marker. And that is when we celebrate the first advent of Jesus Christ. And so Jesus Christ came down to us and we celebrate the first advent on December 25th.
You know what's really interesting about what you just said is, and this is kind of like a tangent, and we are going to discuss Christianity in relation to other religions later on, early next year. But it's funny because, if we understand Christianity to be true, if we understand that Christ really came to this earth and was born as fully, truly man, then why wouldn't we celebrate that? It's funny because, like for example, how there's flat earthers out there. I don't talk to a flat earther in respect to their flat earth views. No, I tell them the truth of the fact that the earth is round and I talk to them as if the earth was round. Why would I talk to somebody to respect their religion when their religion is fake? It's false. It's idol worship. So it's interesting, but we're going to be talking about Islam actually and Christianity early next year. So
yeah,
watch out for that.
recently all these holidays are popping up.
Yeah.
Where now we observe like Jewish holidays and Muslim holidays.
Yeah.
This was not the case, let's say 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And so people are trying to, let's say, take up these markers. And this is all on purpose. It's intentional, I should say. And they're trying to make and overtake these Christian markers that we have had for 2,000 years now. If we go into the history, it's pretty amazing. Well, just going back to the calendar thing. There was a guy named Exiguus, Exiguus, and that was his name because he had a common name back then. I forget exactly what it was. And he had proposed that around the end of, I think it was around end of the 5th century or the beginning of the 6th century or right in the middle, that we start the year on March 25th. So the calendar year should start on March 25th. Why? Can you guess?
The calendar started on March 5th. Why?
25th. Why?
Because it's the spring solstice.
So March 25th is 9 months before December 25th.
Oh, just
And
wrong.
so-
I was wrong completely.
So
You acted like I was
9
right,
months
kind of.
before would have been when the conception of Jesus.
Ah.
So even back in the old times, people believed that conception was life.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. That's a different story. But
Yeah.
so he proposed that we do, we start the new year on March 25th because, Jesus was born on December 25th. And guess what? It was passed. For 1,000 years, the calendar year started on March 25th until like 1580 something. I could actually look it up if you want, but until then, that's exactly what happened, which is so amazing. But then, it was reverted back to what we now know as January 1st, now around the 1500s. And so we have January 1st, but still couldn't get rid of Christmas is my point.
Yeah. I mean, not all holidays are the same.
No.
The truth is the truth is the truth. I'm not going to take your lie and then pretend like it's the truth and celebrate it so that you feel good about your lie. That's ridiculous. That might sound crazy, but we'll talk about it later. So I want to talk about December 25th, though. And I think when I say that there's been a war on Christmas, it's actually from inside and outside the church. And so we have consumerism within the church. We have people doubting, was Jesus really born on this day? Like, how can we celebrate it? Is December 25th actually more holy than other days then, right? And so then you talk about the verse in, I believe, Colossians where Paul talks about festivals. And so we'll get to that as well. But according to my research, this is the history of Christmas. This is according to history.com. The issue that a lot of people have with December 25th is the fact that throughout history, there have been a lot of festivals celebrated in different cultures on or around this day. So for example, in Scandinavia, the Norse, which is the group of people from Scandinavia, they celebrated Yule from December 21st through January. And you'll recognize we use the words Yule-tide log, stuff like that, right? And what they would do is in recognition of the return of the sun, right, because the winter is slowly fading away, fathers and sons would bring home large logs and they would set it on fire, the Yule log, and then they would feast until the log burned out. In Germany, people honor the pagan god Odin during the midwinter holiday. In Rome, Saturnalia, holiday in honor of Saturn, the god of agriculture. It was celebrated in the week leading up to the winter solstice and continued for a full month. And this was like the biggest party. It was a time where food and drink were plentiful, and even slaves were given temporary freedom and treated as equals during this time. Businesses and schools were closed, so kids would have like break for a month. That's crazy. Well, I guess we have summer break. But so when people look at these different festivals and holidays within culture, they think, whoa, okay, hold on. Does this mean that Christmas is just something that we Christians did just to kind of replace that type of culture? What's going on, right? Christmas was not celebrated in the early years of Christianity, but in the 4th century, the church officials decided to institute the birth of Jesus as a holiday. Some people say that Pope Julius I chose December 25th, although some evidence suggests that the birth may have occurred in the spring. Some people say, why would there be shepherds be herding in the middle of winter? Other resources, Britannica, our favorite, not favorite,
British.
But our British ones, the precise origin of assigning December 25th as the birth date of Jesus is unclear. The New Testament provides no clues in this regard. December 25th was first identified as the date of Jesus' birth by Sextus Julius Africanus in 221 AD, and later became the universally accepted date. And so people kind of debate where December 25th came from.
Oh yeah, I mean, people have gone back, astrologically going back,
yes,
to let's say 4 BC when he was born, and saying things like, "Oh, then this would have been when these stars would align, and the Magi would have seen this," and things like that. So people have done all sorts of stuff. Point is, whether you believe that Jesus was actually born on the 25th or not, I think that matters less than the fact that Christians around the world take this one day to celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. I particularly like that it was on Sol Invictus, because while the whole world at the time was partying and celebrating something pagan, Christians said, we're not going to join in this pagan celebration.
Yeah.
We're going to do our own thing. We're going to celebrate, but not with your pagan traditions. We're going to celebrate the advent of our King. And so what took over in the end? What conquered Sol Invictus? It's Christmas. And so you could say maybe the origin was this, even that's debatable. Origin, what do you mean origin? They decided to celebrate this day. And the fact that it is in the winter solstice doesn't mean that Sol Invictus has a monopoly on this day. It is part of our seasonal change. And so it is in the darkest period of the year, we see the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ. So it is symbolic. So the symbol is important. The fact that we have this symbol saying in the darkest moment of history, we saw a great light come in, which is in John chapter 1. And this is what we love. We love the fact that we could celebrate symbolically, if not actually, that Jesus Christ came to us in the darkest point in the history of the world. I want to go back to the Exegus guy.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the exact date. So it was in the year of 1582 that Pope Gregory the 13th, reformed the calendar back to what we have now.
To January 1st.
Yeah. And so before that means from the year 500 when he proposed it all the way to 1582, people started the year on March 25th, which is an incredible, very significant historical point. And so, Exegus was a Scythian monk, and that was his nickname because his name was Dennis, and Dennis was kind of common.
So you're telling me the man's name was Dennis, and they called him Exegus.
Yeah, which means small.
It should be the other way around, no?
So he was a monk, so he wanted to be, he wanted to be named insignificant. He wanted to be small.
Wow.
And so he called himself Exegus. But what this man did was change, history for 1,000 years, which is pretty amazing. And so the whole world, in a sense, revolved around Jesus. And I still do believe that it does. As much as all these people would try to insert and try to obfuscate from the real meaning of Christmas, and then we could have all this day, people get all upset about it.
Yeah.
But I don't think that you can get rid of Christ, because Christ will increase as time goes on. The government will be upon his shoulders, and to which there will be no end. What is Isaiah chapter 9, right? And so government and peace, right?
Yeah.
It will increase, and there will be no end to it. And so we'll see this, and then forevermore, of this truth of Isaiah chapter 9 coming to us.
So I think that's really helpful, because oftentimes when Christians hear, oh, no, December 25th is not the day that Jesus was born, then they start questioning the day, then they start questioning their faith, and it just kind of goes down this uncontrollable frenzy.
Well, it's honestly, it's a matter of faith. I joked about you having a Christmas tree because you're Christian. We know the tree the tree lights came from Martin Luther. But even the Christmas wreath is a Christian thing. I hope people know that. The wreath, the lights on the tree, they're all Christian symbolisms that have been passed down to us for hundreds and over 1,000 years, some of them. And so when we see something like this, I think what we don't realize is that Christians or Christmas really upset the non-Christians, the pagans and the atheists now, right? And so even a famous Christian famous atheist like Christopher Hitchens, he was a famous atheist, a thinker, an intellect.
Yeah.
I think he was brilliant in his own mind, but this one, he was really avidly against Christianity. And he would even come out saying, it's this Christmas holiday, we just can't get around it. Once it hits December, it seems like we have a one-state church. These are his words. It seems like all of a sudden in the United States, there's a one-state church because everybody celebrates Christmas.
Yeah.
And that really upset him. I think people picked up on that. We have to get rid of Christmas. We have to get rid of Christmas. And then when Donald Trump came into office, he started to do this whole movement saying, we're going to start saying Merry Christmas again. And everybody here in the Northeast were rolling their eyes. But if you actually look at the movement from Christopher Hitchens in that time period of how people picked up on that, oh, actually, we do need to get rid of Christmas. We'll start saying happy holidays.
Yeah.
We'll start promoting Hanukkah. Even though nobody was Jewish, we'll just celebrate Hanukkah. What? If you're Jewish and you celebrate Hanukkah, that's one thing. But it was it's so unfair because so many people aren't Christian and we have to celebrate Christmas.
Right.
So instead of saying Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, we'll just say Happy Holidays. And so everybody just started saying Happy Holidays. And then people that picked up on this then, on the other side would say, we got to start saying Merry Christmas again.
Yeah.
But already the culture was starting to shift where people now are I don't know if I want to say Merry Christmas. I don't want to be offensive, that kind of thing. And so because people so it's weak Christians stopped saying Merry Christmas and gave into this whole Happy Holidays garbage. Now we even send cards to one another that say Happy Holidays without thinking twice.
Season's greetings.
Or season's greetings, because we're not thinking about it. So our young millennials or Gen Zers might not understand this. And they might just be like, what's wrong with it? It is a season's greeting, or it is a happy holiday. What's wrong with that?
What season is it, though? It's Christmas season.
If you're a Gen X or a Boomer, you could see the whole shift that has happened where everybody used to say Merry Christmas. And now you see there is a movement to get rid of the word Christmas because you can't get rid of Christ in Christmas. It's literally in the name. So when you say Merry Christmas, when you talk about Santa Claus, whether you believe in him or not, the word Christmas, you can't get around it. You can't get away from the gift, the whole idea of gifts. You can't get away from this whole theme of gift giving. Even though it can be abused, you can't get rid of the major theme of Christmas. And that's why you can't get rid of nativity scenes until you start implementing stuff like this is their plan, that are against Christmas, to get rid of nativity scenes and instead put in, let's say, the candles, or a dreidel, or something like that, or some other symbol, or a non-symbol. Let's get rid of all symbols or something like that. So, but then what people don't realize, what even the pagans don't realize, is the Christmas tree, the Christmas lights, the Christmas wreath, they're all Christian. Can I go into the wreath thing?
Oh yeah, please.
So the wreath was against, I believe, the Druidic religion and them celebrating
Like Druids.
Thor.
Thor?
Hemsworth.
Hemsworth.
Yeah, I guess that.
Well, I guess who Hemsworth plays.
So I'm going to read a quote from God Rest Ye Merry by Douglas Wilson.
Yep.
And he has a chapter called Celebrating Christmas Like a Puritan. And this is a quote from there about the Christmas wreath. One great example, according to the story, the Christmas wreath custom did not come from paganism, but from a remarkable defeat of paganism. Boniface, missionary to the Germans, had chopped down a great oak sacred to Thor. 3 days later, on the first Sunday of Advent, he prevented a human sacrifice and used the sacrificial knife of the Druid priest to cut fir boughs for the people to take home as a reminder of Calvary. So that's where the wreath came from. And so we still have Christmas wreaths on our door. It's to remember that Christ is King. And so even things like that, we got to remember stuff like that, because when we put the Christmas wreath, when we, put on the Christmas lights, they're all pointing back. It's symbolic of Christmas. So December 25th is symbolic of Christmas. And I think that's what we have to remember.
I'm not going to lie to you. I just put a wreath into my Amazon cart just now as you were saying that, because I realized the importance of it. But, understanding the real meaning of Christmas and understanding that all these things are from Christian tradition, I think is very helpful. But I think another concern that some people may have, especially Christians, is, well, the culture of Christmas isn't necessarily Christian today. And so this is according to history.com again. By the Middle Ages, believers attended church, then celebrated a drunken carnival-like atmosphere similar to today's Mardi Gras on Christmas. Sadly, this is kind of how certain people celebrate Christmas today, sadly. Christmas was actually outlawed in early America from 1659 to 1681 in Boston. And it was only later in 1870 that Christmas was declared a federal holiday. And so Christmas has this party history. And it was only later on in American history that we have the values of family and charity placed alongside the holiday. This is what history.com said. Right?
Yeah, history.com is super woke too.
Yeah, so I go there on purpose because I know that the information
Yeah,
that
what
we
was the
get,
other place? PETA? You love PETA. Yeah.
Pita Bread, not the organization. Oh,
So you keep on quoting from PETA in history. Well, let's go back to it. So because Christmas can be celebrated and celebration can lead to excesses,
right.
those excesses don't define the core
No.
of the holiday. And this is what I think woke people and people that are against Christmas can't put two and two together, because they are so against it. They think that, oh, got them. They think got you now, because all these people getting drunk. So just because you have excesses in celebration does not mean the celebration itself is wrong. And so, of course, there are excesses that people go into indulging overly into, let's say, wine or something like that. They party too much, so to speak.
Yeah.
Of course, there will be instances like that. Does that mean we get rid of the holiday? Of course not, right? Just because people take things to the extreme doesn't mean we get rid of it.
Yeah.
And this is what I believe is kind of telling of the culture today. So if people can take advantage of it, we should get rid of it, in that kind of thing.
Yeah.
However, but they'll never say anything about the things that they want. So can people go into excess with atheism? 100%. 100%. Atheism has led to the most destructive historical events in all of time. we don't talk about let's get rid of atheism. In fact, people are like, it was just communism and atheism that wasn't really done right. So you see the hypocrisy of the people that really say, oh, look at this exorcist, so we should get rid of it. Things like what they're trying to insinuate in history.com. Atheism and communism led to tens of millions of deaths in China and Russia separately. Are we going to get rid of atheism? They're like, of course not. Are we going to get rid of communism? Of course not. But they're following the law of communism. They're like, no. Communism wasn't taken seriously enough there. It's like, no, I don't think so. I think what they are doing is they're projecting, because if you took communism to the very end, it would be even worse than what we saw, in the gulags and with Mao's, revolution.
Yeah.
It would be worse than that. But if you took Christmas to the end, it would be glorious. And so what they are doing is they're projecting, and they're saying, oh, what happened back in those days, it was just an excess, and that wasn't really what we were thinking or what it really meant to do. It's all projection, it's all gaslighting, and I wouldn't trust it for a second.
So I think understanding this, some Christians may be wary, and I think the wariness can come from Christmas today has become such a consumeristic, secular day where you have sales everywhere. We have singing of songs that aren't even Christian songs, right? For example, what's a Christmas song that's not Mariah Carey? She's like,
she makes millions every
she
Christmas
has
just on the residual income of that.
She has done well.
The royalties that she gets, yeah.
In the sense of like every Christmas she makes so much money, right? But that's what everyone thinks of when they think of a Christmas song, or even maybe like an Ariana Grande song. They think about these things. They think about Christmas trees, ice skating, cookies, spending time with families. And so Christ has been removed from Christmas for a lot of families in America and around the world. And so I think a Christian could look at this and say, is it wrong to celebrate Christmas the way that the world celebrates? Isn't it safer to not celebrate it, knowing that we celebrate the incarnation of Christ every single day, and especially on Sundays? Isn't it safer to not celebrate it than to fall into the traps of consumerism, the traps of idolatry, traps of second commandment violation that we see, and shifting our focus from Christ to what the world says we should celebrate on Christmas?
That's you. The 2CV thing is you, not me.
No, this is just a general populist
I don't mind
question.
nativity scenes at all. You apparently do. You drive by a nativity scene and you just park your car. You put your car in park and you start flipping things over.
No.
He's like, look at my righteous indignation.
No, I don't do
You make
that.
a whip out of cords. I know you. But yeah, I have no problem with nativity scenes. But, joking aside, I think it goes back to the excesses thing, but I'll add another dimension to that. We have to go back to the original core symbolism of Christmas then.
Yeah.
So if you hear a song that says all I want for Christmas is you, I've seen memes, Christian people take that and say, all I want for Christmas is for my friends and family that don't know Jesus to be saved.
Ooh.
And so they'll add that. So that's a retaking.
Yeah.
And so
Take it back.
You are definitely retaking back what the symbol of Christmas is when you make, let's say, even memes like that.
Right.
So I think memes are a great part of our culture these days. I love it. I love it. I think it's a way people can actually shoot back on the culture shift that's happening, and they put it into a meme where it's funny and yet it has deep meaning, like the good ones.
Yeah.
And so if you think too long on it, if you want to tease it out and elaborate on it, then that's a bad meme. We're not talking about a picture. We're talking about like a 10-second thing that you look at and then you get it, you know?
Yep.
And so all I want for Christmas, is for my friends and family that don't know Jesus to be saved. I love that. So I like that meme. I saved it, that kind of thing. And you put it in your meme folder. I don't know if people do that. But, it's one of those things where you just really appreciate the meme. So you give it a like or a heart or a check mark or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I do think that it is about taking it back, where when you gather, then why don't you start singing a Christmas song or a hymn? Even a carol is great.
Yeah.
And why don't we sing something like Silent Night before the opening of an episode of a podcast? So you start taking things back.
Yeah.
I think that's what we need to do. And so it's not just to focus on, okay, let's not go to the excesses, but the next dimension, I believe, would be you start taking it back. So when you shop, you have to have a theology of gift giving.
Oh, we're going to talk about that next week.
Okay.
Please save it. Please.
All right. Well, we have to have a theology of gift giving if you're going to shop.
Yeah.
And so those are things that we should always keep in mind. Everything that we do has theological value.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to do something, then you should remember when you celebrate Christmas, you are celebrating joy to the world. You are celebrating that Jesus has come down so that the world can have peace, so that the world can have joy. And so that's what this celebration is all about. So don't forget the symbol. When you're getting all trapped up in nuance and dates and particulars, don't forget the symbol, because once you forget the symbol, I think you lose a lot. You lose too much.
So I think the question is, okay, we know that the way that the world celebrates can be not great. Actually, it's rarely good. But where do we draw the line, though? So as Christians, where do we draw the line? We understand that on Christmas, we celebrate the birth of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Does that mean then, though, that we shouldn't celebrate with the family dinner? Does that mean that we shouldn't give, right? Does that mean that we shouldn't, do X, Y, and Z because this is an almost worldly tradition, right? Because in the world, Christmas is a family holiday where the family gets together to celebrate. I don't know what they celebrate if they're not Christian, but they are celebrating something, right? So family dinners, family get-togethers, people giving gifts to one another, white Santa, stuff like that. Can Christians take part in these things, understanding that our focus is still on Christ, and how can we do that?
Well, I think I mentioned it on the Sunday before this one, and that is when we look at Christmas, there are two aspects: the celebration part and the penitential part, where you prepare yourself for the second coming.
Okay.
And so when you are, kind of in a celebratory, and yet you understand that there is an aspect of a somber mood that you should also have, there is this kind of dichotomy that's being played out. Jesus has come, joy has come to the world, the light has come into the world, and he will come again. And so understanding that, remembering that there are these dual aspects to Christmas that we all Christians should remember. And this is something that the Puritans actually had. They had this more penitent attitude when it came to Christmas. Now, I get it that maybe they were less celebratory in some of the records that we have. And I do like the celebratory culture that we have, the aspect that we have now. I think we've lost all of the penitential part, where there is no more recognizing that Jesus will come again.
Yeah.
And so one of the great songs that we sing are things like Silent Night, where you just remember that, this baby has come to us in such a fragile and almost, vulnerable way, this humble position that God has come to us. And that should put you into a place of not just like deep, somber reflection, but also after that, it should continue to put you in awe. How can someone so great come to us in such a humble manner?
Yeah.
And so Christmas is great celebration, but at the same time, it humbles us. So that's why we can be penitent. That's why we can be somber. And when you think about the aspects and the details of Christmas, the dimensions of Christmas, it's pretty amazing that we get to think about it. And if you're saying, well, I don't need to celebrate Christmas to think about that.
Right.
It's like, great, do it all year round. But there is a point or a marker in the calendar where the church can especially think about that.
Yeah.
And that's why Christmas is great. This is a marker for the church. It's a marker for the world that Christ has come to us. He is Emmanuel. He is God with us. He has come to bring peace and joy. He is a light in the darkness, and he has come to us in the most humble manner.
Yeah.
And so when we think about things like that, it puts us in these positions where we're just constantly in awe and we're put into a place of worship. It culminates on Christmas Day, on December 25th, where you should have this grand celebration. And that's why I think Christmas is incredible. It's incredible. It's one of those holidays, I think, one of the two major Christian holidays that we should always remember, Christmas and Easter, where even, nominal people will recognize these are the two holidays I should at least go to church. And I get it, they should go to church every Sunday, but even the most nominal people understand how separate Christmas and Easter are.
Yeah.
And so we should also acknowledge that this is a symbol of great importance for the Christian church.
So we should tell people, don't be so mad. Don't be so mad. Just because the world celebrates a certain way doesn't mean that there is value.
Well, I want to take it to the flip side. I know you're coming at it from the church perspective because most people listening to this are churchgoers, but I want to tell the churchgoers that when you celebrate Christmas, it is an insurrection. It is not revolutionary, but it's insurrectiony, because what it is you're taking the systems that the world has already thought has been established, and then there's this huge rock that's coming in and destroying this entire statue or this entire structure. And when you say Merry Christmas, it is an insurrection. It is a rebellion against the systems of the world. When you say Merry Christmas, you are saying that Christ is King. He has come to rule. When you say Merry Christmas to one another, you are effectively saying Christ is King. And you are saying that to other people. Merry Christmas means Christ is King. Merry Christmas maybe to someone means, oh, let's have warm, fuzzy feelings around the fire. Baby, it's cold outside. Maybe it brings those kind of feelings. But to the Christian, they are saying Christ is King. So say Merry Christmas, celebrate Christmas, celebrate it for what it truly is, because what it truly is something so spectacular. And it has all these things that I could keep on going on, but it has that aspect too. So for the other side, it is speaking out against the systems of the world, saying Christ has conquered you. You are under Christ's dominion.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. But this is kind of a side note, but what do we do with Christmas Eve? Like what is that about?
What's funny? I remember, I think it was Christmas Eve, I saw one of the kids here in our church.
Yeah.
And I said, Merry Christmas. And they go, no, it's Merry Christmas Eve. It's like, okay, Merry Christmas. Christmas is a season, right? Yeah. And so when we say Merry Christmas, we celebrate all of Advent saying Merry Christmas. And even the 12 days after Christmas, we could say Merry Christmas. So even after Christmas, on the 26th, I say Merry Christmas. They're like, it's not Christmas anymore.
Yeah.
But I go, Merry Christmas. It's still Christmas season. And so it confuses the little kids.
Yeah.
But, what do we do with Christmas?
So the reason why I asked that,
it,
right, is because Christmas Eve feels like a worldly thing, right? So Christmas Eve feels like hey, Santa Claus is coming, so you better sleep early and bake the cookies. That's what Christmas Eve kind of feels like, right? But if we look at the Bible, the shepherds, the three kings, if they were traveling from where they were to go to Christ, then they were traveling from before Christmas Eve. And if it was at night, and if they got there on Christmas Day, right? That's what we're saying. If Christmas is the day that Christ was born.
One thing is for sure, even though we don't know the day, we do know that Jesus was born in the night.
Yeah.
Which is also symbolic.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that you see in John is like things happen in the night and then Jesus comes in. Mm-hmm. And so he is the light in the dark time. And so he is the one that brings the day. Mm-hmm. So if you look at Genesis chapter 1, the days passed. First there was night and then there was day, the second day. Or first there was night and then there was a day, the third day. That's how it counts. So first there's the night and then there's the light, which is Jesus. Jesus is the day that has come. But you see when the shepherds went to Jesus, it was at night. Mm-hmm. And so you know that Jesus was born at the night. So presumably Jesus was just born and the shepherds got there. The Magi came later. They didn't come that day, right? And so that's why even in the Christian calendars, 12 days after, some say he was, even much older than a few days, like maybe a year or two older, that kind of thing. But matters not. The point is that when the shepherds have come in the night, they were recognizing something. They were seeing that Jesus was the hope come into the world.
Yeah.
He was, and this is the sermon from yesterday. He's peace on earth, peace that we could have never had. And when you celebrate Christmas Eve, then I would think that then it is in anticipation of Christmas.
I see, because nothing happened on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, so it's the anticipation of the birth of Christ. So just as mom is in labor pains that are most intense right before or while she is giving birth, right?
I see.
And so that's what Christmas Eve to me would probably be symbolic of.
Right.
And so, yeah, I guess you could say Merry Christmas Eve. I don't think Christmas Eve is a thing, but yeah, it's Christmas is so big it needs an Eve, just like New Year's. You know what I mean?
I see.
Or it's right before the New Year, so there's a big thing that happens on the eve. It's in great anticipation of the big thing that's going to happen.
I see. Yeah, some churches do concerts and sing-alongs on Christmas Eve in anticipation for Christmas.
Yeah, some churches meet on Christmas Eve and then Christmas Day.
Christmas Day
in the morning.
Night? Oh, in the morning.
And then Christmas Eve at night. So some churches actually do both.
Right.
Our church, unfortunately, we only do one on Christmas Day.
Christmas Day morning, right.
But if we did both Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, I don't know if our culture has allowed for that yet, where people are like, man, I got to dress up again.
Yeah.
And so people go through a lot of preparation to come to church, which is a good thing. But, back in the day, people just used to just come. People just used to get ready and come to church. And then if they had to go to church again, they would just go to church again. Now it's a whole ordeal, I suppose. And so as far as I know, most churches, they just meet on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
If you're a church that meets on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, then good on you. I think
there you go.
You should be so thankful for that your church is just willing to gather on those days and just have a grand old celebration, which is proper in my opinion.
Every Christmas Eve, I feel a little awkward. Like I don't know what to do. Like what am I even supposed to do? I feel like I'm supposed to do something. I feel like media tells me to do something. I have to turn on my fireplace, but I don't have a fireplace. So what do?
You should prepare for Christmas.
So do I sleep early? But if I sleep early, it's almost as if like I'm waiting for Santa Claus, but I don't wait for Santa Claus.
Leave out milk and cookies.
So when I was a child, I thought that my parents didn't know. Well, no, I thought that my brother didn't know. And so what I would do is I would leave out the cookies and milk. I'd make it a point that I left it. And that night I would eat it. Because I wanted them to believe that Santa Claus was coming. I don't know. I thought I was the only wise one. Like I knew, but my brother didn't. Anyway, that's weird. My brother listens to this podcast, so maybe he's like, oh, wow, Santa Claus isn't real? Maybe he just realized. Sorry, John.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
He tends to lean into the fantastical.
The mythical.
I wrote a book a couple of years ago.
It's right there.
But I don't want to talk about it.
Why do we put it up there?
Because it's like one of those things that, what have we done kind of thing. But quick question. So we know that Christmas, the focus of Christmas is Christ. But, and this is the question that I want to end with, and maybe this is just kind of something that our listeners can reflect on as they listen and kind of think about this throughout the week is, if we're honest with ourselves, sadly, Christ oftentimes is not the center of Christmas. If we're honest with ourselves, sadly, we wait for Christmas service to end. Like we go to Christmas service because that's what you're supposed to be doing. But that's not the most joyous part of our day. The most joyous part of our day is after service is over, we go home and we eat, drink, and we be merry. And that is what we look forward to on Christmas. If, for example, if we had to choose service or dinner with family, being merry with family, we would pick being merry with family if we're honest with ourselves, some of us. And so if that is you, if that is us, how do we put Christ back into Christmas? How do we make Christ the pinnacle, the ultimate joy of Christmas and not everything else that comes with it?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think what we have to do is we have to be intentional. As soon as Christmas morning hits, there is this kind of picturesque view that people have of Christmas where kids run down the stairs.
Oh, yeah.
And they look to open their gifts that Santa Claus has brought.
Yeah.
I grew up in a small apartment, so there were no stairs to go down. My dad or my mom would put the gift behind my pillow. So I remember I woke up because my head was shifted forward because they were putting a train set behind my head.
Wow.
And so I had a little train set.
Wow.
And I still remember that gift, but it's a joyous time where kids can be really excited.
Yeah.
I think every family can do something notable. One thing that our church does is, because Christmas service is in the morning, that's something that immediately that we get to do. So as soon as you wake up, you're getting ready for church, and then the first thing that we want to do is worship God. But even if we didn't and you wanted to have a family, let's say your kids want to open up the gifts before service, I know that some parents will say, no, the gifts will come after the service. So some parents do that. Maybe do a quick worship, sing a carol, sing a Christmas hymn before the gifts, so you remember what the most precious gift is.
Shout out
to The Most Precious Gift,
which is the book that I wrote.
Yeah. And so as long as you remember that, maybe just read this book called The Most Precious Gift
If you want it, let me know. It's free.
with your kid.
Yep.
And then have them open the gift. That would be great. It's a great book, by the way. It's a great book. And so one of the things that we can always do is we just be intentional about putting Christ in the center and making sure that we're actually just recognizing that He is in the center of Christmas.
Yeah.
We're not trying to dismiss it and just say, let's just go with whatever the flow is. And so being intentional is going to be good, just like the wise men bringing their gifts were intentional. We weren't going to get into the theology of gifts, but yeah.
Yeah, that's for next week. And so the reason why I wanted to ask this question as we end this portion of our podcast is because I want us to think about where we are at. Is our heart in the right place? Do we really, truly value Christ? Or are we just saying that? Are we just saying that in front of our kids because we know it's the right thing to do? Are we just going to church because that's what you're supposed to do? Does our heart truly yearn for Christ as we celebrate His first coming? Do we yearn for His second coming? And so these are some of the things that I wanted us to kind of consider and think about. As we move into next week, we'll truly talk about maybe even application, practically, how we can put Christ in the middle of Christmas, even in our gift giving. And so that's what we'll talk about next week, if that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, in the meantime, just just remember that Christ has come. This is a historical fact.
Yep.
That Jesus has come. And when He says, I will come again, then that's something that we can hold on to.
Yeah.
That should bring us great joy and just eager anticipation. That's the kind of hope that we would hold on to as we celebrate Advent.
Was Christmas the first time Jesus came to this earth?
Are you talking about Christophanies? Shall we get into that?
No, I just wanted to leave with that question. Because the question of theophany and Christophanies is real. Like, what happened with Joshua? Who was he looking at?
Was it an angel or Christ?
See, that's tough because he worships and the angel or whoever it was doesn't say get up.
Yeah.
Daniel 3. Talk about, Exodus.
The Son
3.
of Man. Someone that looks like the Son of Man.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Do you want me to give you a crazy one?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right.
This is a good way to end.
All right. This could be heresy. So
well, you can't start off with that.
We haven't had this in a while.
You can't start
We haven't
off
had
with
this in a while, but it's one of those crazy theories that stays with you.
Uh-huh.
I haven't really looked into it.
Yeah.
But you reminded me of it. Maybe I'll look into it. But let me just say it.
Yeah.
Might as well put it out there. Brian can always edit it, or we can always follow up. But there's a portion in the Old Testament where Moses goes into the crack or the creek of the mountain, and God passes by. And there is a portion where Elijah goes into the cave of the mountain, and then the whisper comes.
Yeah.
And then you see the transfiguration on the mountain. And in the transfiguration of Jesus on the mountain, there are two
Right.
prophets.
Right.
Who was it?
Moses and Elijah.
And for some reason, Peter just knew who they were. Why? Did they go, there's Moses? So the theory is all of time and space converged into that one moment on the transfiguration.
No,
Even
no,
at
no,
that-
no, no.
Hit the button, hit the button.
No.
So now we're mixing in Marvel. Anyway, the point is when we're talking about Jesus Christ. So this is what gets me. When we're talking about Jesus Christ, he has confined himself to a place and time in history for our benefit, obviously, and the glory of God. Could he have come at other times? Absolutely. Absolutely. There is nothing that says he couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to say that he wasn't there with Moses or wasn't there with Elijah or wasn't there as the Lord of hosts with Joshua. There's nothing to say that. Now, was it Jesus then? It doesn't say. That's
Yeah.
the point.
Yeah.
So the thing about Christophanies is it doesn't say. So because it doesn't say, I believe that even if you have certain things and theories, you can't be 100% positive. So we
Right.
can't be going out there being like, it's 100% sure, things like that. But it is kind of telling that every single angel tells them to get up, not to worship me,
Yep.
but not the one that visits Joshua.
No.
Right. And then so,
And the holy ground thing too.
yeah.
Similar to
And
Exodus
even
3.
similar with Moses, similar with, so people think that's a Christophany.
Yeah.
Because the only time that, you could actually see a physical manifestation, that's the Son.
Yeah.
Because the Father sends the Son.
Yeah.
And so you can't see God. You can only see God through the Son. So that's a theological point there.
But yeah.
You like that.
That's yeah.
You like that.
That one
You
is-
love it. You love the transfiguration.
Yeah, I don't want to think about that anymore. That is interesting. Thank you for that, Pastor Eugene. And, as we continue to reflect this week and as we have been during this Advent season, we pray that Christ truly would be at the center of Christmas, that we would reflect on Christ and on his first coming. And as we do an Advent, wait in anticipation and hope for his second coming. Now, I wanted to move into a Q&A and current event that are tied and linked together. I want to do the Q&A first because I think it'll provide a good segue for us.
We need a beat.
What you got in the bag? What you got in the bag?
What you got in the bag?
The question that we received reads, how are we to, as Christians, view and support or not support the death penalty when the evidence points to one culprit with 100% certainty? In light of the recent trial of Lake and Riley's killer, I find myself hoping that the murderer and illegal migrant would receive the death penalty as it is legal in the state of Georgia. Can one be pro-life and pro-death simultaneously? Meaning pro-death, or pro-death only in extreme and 100% in certain cases when no other punishment can satisfy means of justice. And I think what this person is asking is, can we be both pro-life, meaning anti-abortion, and pro-death penalty at the same time? Or are those views conflicting?
No, I think you absolutely can be. I think you should be. If you are pro-life, you should be pro-death penalty. Because to save a life, you should be able to have, or you should have the government take the sword to protect a life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's not like we're saying they're on both equal grounds. I'm not talking about worth here, but on grounds of justice where someone is lunging at you with a knife. And so you're like, well, I can't really kill the guy that's lunging at you with a knife because that'll be taking a life too. So then I won't be really pro-life by saving Sam. I'll be pro-death. See, that's the kind of weird mentality that people are stuck with. No. So you use lethal force to stop somebody that's trying to kill you or to stop an innocent person. Now, when we go to the death penalty, it is in response to, let's say, we want justice to be done. This person did a horrific crime, and the only way we can, have this kind of relief or the execution of justice is the death penalty. And then I would say, yes, absolutely. I am not one of those proponents. I think that the Pope is like anti-death penalty. There were so many wrong death penalty things, so people use that, saying there shouldn't be. No. Again, the excesses or the extremes or the mistakes don't define the core. The core is, if you do a crime worthy of the death penalty, you should get the death penalty. That's what it is.
But who says that, though? So I guess that's the question that people may have when they think about pro-life and pro-death. You, at that moment, you were deciding the worth of that individual. So let's just say, and this is a terrible example, right? Let's just say there's a person that is lunging at another person with a knife, and you have the only power to stop this murder from happening. But in order for you to stop this murder from happening, you have to kill the person that's going to murder.
Yeah. So that will most likely be, let's say, a police officer or someone that's enforcing the law.
Right.
So to enforce the law, you would have to, put down this person. You have to kill this person.
But then
to save the life.
But at that moment, you are then deciding and judging who is worth saving. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the person that's defenseless, you need to defend.
So I think, so the question is, right, and I think you could go into kind of like a rabbit hole with this, because you could start thinking about like, okay, well, the murderer was actually a good guy, and the guy that he was about to murder actually had murdered his child prior, so he was taking revenge. I don't know. The situation can
absolutely.
go, right?
It definitely could. But that's why split-second decisions must be made, and at that moment, you can only judge with what you have. And then afterwards, there is a process to go through all that stuff. So if, without knowing anything, if you take a knife and you lunge at another person, a law enforcement officer should take you down.
Yep.
That's what it is.
Yep.
And so we're not sitting there deliberating exactly, let me look into. No, at that moment, you have to make a split-second decision, and someone who is qualified to make it must make it. And that's why we have police officers. But if you, let's say even if someone that's not necessarily qualified, let's say I'm your friend, but I have the means to stop an attacker, would I stop him? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. You need to defend your friends and you need to defend your family, especially your family. So please don't get that confused. If someone is trying to attack and kill or harm your family member and you need to protect them, you protect them.
But the thing with the pro-life movement has always been a life is a life, right? A life is a life. If you're saying that you can be pro-death penalty, people can think that you're actually going against that. Like, what are you saying? This life isn't worth saving? You're saying that he might not turn?
So that's the thing about the confusion between moral standards with people who don't have moral standards. You see it in the Bible that there is a right to defend yourself. So if you killed somebody, but you were defending yourself, there's a place that you go, you won't get killed. You won't get executed.
The cities of
refuge. A life
refuge.
is still a life.
Yeah.
A life is still, absolutely. There is a cost for taking a life.
Yeah.
But you do it under the most extreme duress or circumstances. That's when you would do it. You wouldn't just go around taking lives, right? That's why vigilante justice isn't something that is looked highly upon. It's frowned upon unless you go into like comic books and things like that. But those are also extreme cases, like in Gotham. Those are
like the city or the show? I guess it's both.
Both, yeah.
Yeah.
Where it has deteriorated so much that, you want any form of justice, even vigilante justice, and someone like Batman shows up.
Yeah.
And that's why he's such a controversial figure. But when it comes to, let's say, I want pro-life, it's, well, if the baby is not trying to kill you, why are you killing the baby? That's pro-life, right? So if someone's just standing there, why would you shoot him? He's just standing there.
I see. Okay.
So you don't just kill anybody for any reason at all. And so our pro-choice or pro-aborts, that culture has gone to the place where if that person inconveniences me, then I should be able to kill it. That's where pro-life people are saying no. Just because they're an inconvenience does not mean that you can kill the baby. Now the baby, under very rare circumstances, and it's extremely rare. In fact, one former abortionist said he had, of the thousands of cases that he did where he actually murdered babies, and now he's in repentant mode, but he would say there were 0 cases where the mother's life was actually in danger. 0 cases that he did. in the
Yeah.
thousands that he performed. And so it's so rare. And this is like the extreme case that we want to take and we want to uphold. Just because a person is an inconvenience to you does not mean that you can kill them. That is a pro-life position.
I see. Okay.
And so that's the thing that I think the standard that non-Christians don't understand. Life is precious. Even if they're an inconvenience to you, you can't kill because life is precious. But if that life threatens you, then you have to make a very difficult decision.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes
those are
perfect
very
sense.
difficult decisions. And were there times where, a mom said, "Don't kill the baby. I'd rather die." 100%. There were tons of times like that. And then the dad would have to make the decision, and the dad would almost always, say, "Save the mom."
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so those are times that have happened. They're very unfortunate. It's tragic, but now with technology today, it's even more rare than it was back then. That's the point.
So the difference is in pro-life, or I guess in abortion, what you're doing is you're killing out of convenience or
Which is,
inconvenience.
I mean, the
rather.
CDC came out with numbers, and the CDC numbers are insane because, first of all, they are not a conservative like group.
Yeah.
And yet, in the CDC numbers, we see. Hold on, let me try to bring this up, and I'll give it to Brian to put it up, but let me give it to you now. But if you look at the numbers that are being reported of people getting abortions, and Brian, please put this up. But if you look at the abortion for social or economic reasons, which is not a reason, by the way. Oh, because the kid will be poor. Get out of here with that. But
This is crazy stats.
even if you look at that, over 95% of abortions was because the woman just didn't want the
Yep.
baby. It
Yep.
was just an inconvenience.
Yep.
Look at the 1.88%.
Yep.
Psychological health was
Yep.
threatened.
I would say that's still
That's crazy. And
Within.
physical health could be a range of things. What do you mean?
Right.
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 You're going to get diabetes or something like that. Like, what does that mean?
'Cause
So
there's
if you
a difference.
go to all the way to like,
Yeah.
let's say, to what is rape and incest, it's less than 0.2%.
Yeah.
Less than 0.2% rape and incest, which everybody wants to make an exception for.
Yeah.
And this is the CDC reporting on it, and there can be an argument made for even serious fetal abnormality, which is still less than 1%. Because I know of moms, Christian mothers, who still birthed their babies and held their babies for the last moments of their lives. And
Yep.
their reasoning was, why should I deprive this baby of their mother's embrace before they get to see God?
Yeah.
And so that's their reasoning. And so, these statistics are crazy because the world has gone crazy. We don't know what life is. We don't appreciate what God has given us. We don't know just the preciousness of life. And now we're just like, I don't even want to give a reason and just have an abortion through Planned Parenthood. And that's totally okay. It should never have been okay. I don't think even incest and rape should be an exception, but even if they did have the exception, you would see that it would have been 0.16% of all the abortions taking
It'd
place.
go down
now.
by like 98.
And this is the CDC reporting.
Yep.
And
That's
so,
crazy.
Yeah, there's that for you.
I
You
mean,
can look at that.
What stands out right when you see it is the distinction between the woman's life was endangered by the pregnancy, 0.2%. The woman's physical health was threatened by the pregnancy. And so the 1.48, which means that in the 1.48, the woman's life was not endangered by the pregnancy.
No.
So it's yeah.
Yeah, so if we take that and then, and people are always talking about ectopic pregnancies.
Yep,
And all
yep.
that. We kept on saying that a Christian would not consider an abortion. Maybe the CDC would, I don't know. But maybe other places would. We don't consider that an abortion because the baby wouldn't have lived and the mother's life is in danger.
Yeah.
And so those are cases that they're all straw men that people throw at pro-lifers, and you have to know, how to defend against such vile and despicable arguments against the pro-life movement. Well, that means you should raise them all until they're, old and gray. It's like, what? Just because you say you shouldn't murder someone doesn't mean I'm not responsible of taking care of this person till they're old and gray.
Yeah.
Why can't people make that distinction? It's
Yeah.
because our minds have been clouded. There is a veil over our eyes, and we've now been given in to this moral corruption, and now we're swimming in this milieu. And even the Christians out there are being duped. That's the point. Christians are being duped. And when I talk to some, they're like, oh, yeah, this is a big issue for you. And I want to say, this should be a big issue for everybody. Are you kidding me? And so if you want to compare the death penalty with abortion, not comparable.
So the difference between abortion and the death penalty is that abortion is murdering out of inconvenience.
At least 95%.
At least.
At least 95%.
If we took out 95%, we would have significantly less abortions.
We would have 1 million babies every year.
Yeah.
We would have 1 million lives every year.
Like, yeah, that's insane. Whereas the death penalty is death because this person is either a harm to society and they deserve the punishment for the crimes that they've committed here.
Yeah.
So, what if then I asked, well, can't that person turn, right? We don't know, right? So, for example, even the thief on the cross, he turned, right? So why are we just killing these people?
I think that's why there's death row. It's out of mercy because you could kill them right after the sentence, but after the sentence, there is a period. And in that period, I know that a lot of people actually turned their lives to Christ.
Yeah.
And even though they did such a horrific act here on this earth that deserved the death penalty, which must be carried out by the government because they have the power of the sword, that they will still see God in heaven. So that thief or murderer, Jesus will forgive them, which is an incredible gospel for people to hold on to as they die.
So now that we have kind of distinguished between abortion and the death penalty, my question is, what if someone was guilty of a crime, but they were never convicted because they had the money to back it up? And the reason why I asked this is because this is a current event. I believe it was Wednesday morning. So it was December 4th, the morning of December 4th. I think it was 6:30 something like that a.m. Midtown New York. The CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson, was gunned down in broad daylight. People, argue whether this was a professional hit or it wasn't, because there's a literal video. I don't think Brian should put it up, but if you are curious, you could find it anywhere now. There's a video of this man being killed, being assassinated, being murdered during the morning, like in the morning in daylight, and then the murderer just kind of jogs off.
Yeah, the assassin. And so it looks definitely like an assassination.
Right. And so people kind of debate whether this was a professional, whether this is an amateur. But what is true is that this person was murdered. Now, I guess what I want to also talk about is are the comments coming from this. It almost seems like people focus more on whether this guy was a professional or a not professional assassin, how he did it, the fact that it was such a clean hit. I don't even know what that means. People focus and talk more about that than the fact that this man was just murdered in the middle of the street at 6:30 something on Wednesday morning. Not only that, if you look at comments, people are making ridiculous comments, connecting him, like making puns. People will say, oh, this murder was out of pocket because he was an insurance person. Or like, oh, I'm sure there was no copay for that. Like people are making these crazy comments about the murder of this individual because they think that he was this evil man that didn't provide healthcare for the people that needed it and made them overpay and whatnot. And so it's almost like people think that he deserved to die. People don't feel bad about the fact that he died because he deserved it, because he deprived Americans from healthcare. And when Americans did get healthcare, they had to pay way above and beyond their means. And so this guy deserved it. And so people might even think, well, you know what? This guy wasn't convicted in court, but he did bad things that deserved it. He wouldn't have gone to court because he has so much money. He would have beat the court system anyway. So he needed to have died.
Yeah, these are people who don't believe in God. This is where I think the woke left and the woke right is now emerging And we are seeing that people both on the extreme left and the extreme right celebrated the murder or the assassination of this CEO. And I think that's what happens when you don't know Jesus. That's what it is. Well, no matter what it is, let's say you hate the left, but you don't know Jesus, you'll go to the woke right. You'll go to the extreme right, where you'll also celebrate the death of a CEO or the murder of somebody in cold blood. This is not how Christians act or how we should react. It's sad, and what we hope for is justice. If not in this lifetime, there is sure justice for this person. Unless he turns his life to Christ before he dies, there is a sure justice that is coming for him. Hopefully he gets caught and we see who is behind this, because it does seem like it wasn't a robbery. He didn't take anything. He just wanted to shoot and kill him. So it is murder. I heard there were like writings on the casings and things like that, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And was that? And he had a suppressor, right?
And he didn't kill the person that was next to him.
No, the person just ran.
Yeah.
And so it does have, it's telling that it's probably an assassination. But I think the more important thing is it's kind of revealing to us what kind of culture we are diving into. Whether you go into the extreme left or extreme right, without Christ, it is going to be a terrible society.
But so let me ask you a question. A lot of people think that this man is guilty of crimes that are not in court because he has money to back him up. He's guilty. He's guilty just as a prisoner that is on death row is guilty. Are we saying then that who lives and dies should only be decided by the court? Because if this man is just as guilty as someone that's on death row, he should die as well.
Yeah, we should pray for justice, but we don't take justice into our own hands. The Lord is our vengeance. And so we don't take vengeance. That's literally not just in the New Testament, that's in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And so those are things that Christians will not do. We wouldn't put a gun in someone's hand. And if someone has a gun and assassinates someone, you wouldn't necessarily celebrate. People are like, oh, we should celebrate because this was an evil man.
Right.
You don't know anything about this man.
Right.
You know that he was a CEO of a company that maybe you didn't agree with.
Yep.
You don't know anything about this man. So that's where I'm saying we have gone to such an extreme where we're saying that you are guilty by association. Now, if you are, and these are extremes on any side, is if you just seen hanging out with a guy with a MAGA hat, you too are culpable and you are guilty by association. So we should, excommunicate you from our friend group or whatever it is. And that's what it is. We've come to this place where people have no understanding, no forgiveness, no grace. It's a graceless society that we are going to. And I think that that's what the extremes prove. The extreme left or right will prove that you live in a graceless society. I think that's what's missing in the dialogue when you bring up questions like this. When you are missing grace in a dialogue, then you are just talking about, the iron fist.
Yeah.
And that's not a society that you want to live in, trust me.
I think the lesson of this podcast is as we think about the first coming of Christ and wait in anticipation for the second coming of Christ, that we as Christians are to be different from the world, and that, like you said, we need to be showing love and grace to those who are our neighbors, who are around us. I mean, it was kind of a sad thing for me to see our society first of all, an assassination happening like this in broad daylight is crazy. Like, where are we? And second of all, the reactions from people. The fact that people are talking more about the way that this assassin did things more than the fact that this family just lost this man. Like, no one's talking about that, right? Everyone's talking about the shell casings. Everyone's talking about 9mm, or was it not? Like, what kind of gun was it? Where is it? That's all they're talking about. They're talking about the assassin more than the person that was killed.
Yeah.
And that's a crazy, crazy thing for me to see.
Yeah, I'm sure it just doesn't sit well with Christians to have someone assassinated in broad daylight like that.
Yeah.
It's just cold-blooded murder.
Yeah.
It shouldn't sit well with anybody. And so if you're like, well, he did evil things, it's like, well, maybe someone will come for you one day.
Yeah.
And then, you should thank the Lord that he didn't take you before you repented.
Yeah.
And so we always pray for people's repentance.
Yeah.
Even the president, when we don't like him, we don't go, let's have someone murder him.
Right.
We pray for the change in his heart. We pray that he sees the justice of God and follows it. We pray that he live and rule and execute in the fear of the Lord.
Yeah.
That's what we pray for. So every Sunday we pray for the sitting president, that the fear of the Lord would guide his judgments and his rule.
Yeah. So I guess our encouragement is that we would be Christians that continue to pray for our neighbor, continue to pray for our nation, pray for our leaders, pray for all those who are around us, and that we too would daily repent in our sanctification to be more like Christ.
Yeah, I mean, let me just remind you one time again that the ends do not justify the means
No.
for us.
No.
And so maybe he was an evil man, but the ends do not justify the means.
No. We thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. We will be discussing how Christians can give gifts. What are the top 10 Christmas gifts that a Christian should give? Ooh. Oh, that's a good one. I mean, to be honest, if you're listening to this at that time,
Imagine the Bible's not up there.
that's true. If they listen to that, this would be an episode that drops on the 16th, so it might be a little too late for you. But
That's too late.
what are top 10 gifts that a Christian can give? Make it a little festive, make it a little fun. That's what we'll talk about next week on the Dear Church podcast. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight, finish the race, keep the faith.
Peace.